My twin sister and I were always very close, and although we looked exactly the same, we were opposite in personality. Jackie was always the life of the party. She was loud, adventurous, passionate, and always the center of attention. I, on the other hand, couldn't think of much worse than being the center of attention. Our mother was a music teacher and had drummed music into our souls from our first appearance into the world. We were weaned on classical music and had instruments in our hands before we could barely walk. Jackie played the cello and I played the flute. Jackie had an amazing talent. She could make people cry when she played, and she got every single solo that came up. I had never gotten a solo, which was very frustrating. I was good on the flute, very good, but my playing didn't have the emotion behind it that Jackie's did. I could memorize music like nobody's business. I could stand for hours, practice for hours, polish that flute, but I still would never be as good as Jackie. What bothered me the most about it was that she was just a natural at it. She barely ever practiced, except for when our mom was making up. Even then, Jackie would often end up sneaking out our bedroom window and climbing down the rose-covered trellis to run off with boys. There was a Christmas concert one year, and at this concert, I was to have my first ever solo. I practiced till I could practice no longer. I ironed the dress I had chosen to wear, did my hair perfectly, and had my mom play alongside of me on the piano. I had to admit, I was sounding good. I felt like maybe, finally, I would be noticed like Jackie was. Jackie, on the other hand, just breezed in a mere hour before the concert was starting. She hadn't even changed and was hurriedly smearing deodorant on as she tossed clothes out of her closet and onto the floor in search of something she thought would be acceptable. She found a red dress, sniffed it, said it smelled clean enough, and pulled it on over her head. "Oh, Jackie," I said, "would it kill you to put in a little more effort?" "Yes, actually it would." Jackie made the funniest face at me as she said it, and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. This was exactly why everyone loved her so. She never worried about a thing, and somehow it seemed to work out for her. That night at the concert, there were some local scouts from the music school in the audience. My mother had known about it, but didn't mention it to us as she knew it would make me too nervous. After the concert, with both successful solos, we were approached by a scout. To my great surprise, he wanted both of us. Jackie was pleased and went through the motions of how grateful she was for the opportunity. She was nothing if not charming. I cried tears of joy into my pillow that night. I loved how proud my mother looked when she got the news, and Jackie and I loved that we would be able to attend music school together. On our first day of class, I met my future husband. He was rushing out of the school with a scarf haphazardly hanging so low around his neck, it was practically dragging on the ground. As he rushed down the steps, his violin case opened and sheets of music fluttered everywhere. I stopped down to help him pick them up, and we locked eyes. We barely noticed the pieces of paper flapping all around us. We dated for a few months, and to my great shock and surprise, he proposed to me one night in front of my entire family at Sunday dinner. I instinctually looked over at Jackie, and she looked away. I wasn't sure, but it looked like she wiped a tear from her eye. That night when we were going to bed, Jackie confessed to me that she didn't want me to get married. She was worried it would split us up. Really, though, I had to wonder if what was really bothering her was that I had gotten engaged first. When Kip and I first started dating, Jackie seemed jealous, like she wanted him for herself. I must say, they would have been better suited. Kip was very handsome and charming. He, like Jackie, was always the life of the party. I was still a little shocked that he had picked me, but he said he loved my quiet, awkward way. I decided to give up music school to move to the country with Kip and start a family. We had 3 children, chickens, a classic farmhouse, and couldn't have been happier. Jackie had done well for herself and married a famous pianist. Together, they toured the country writing and playing music together. Their wedding was on the front page of our local paper. Not that mine had been, but I didn't care. My life had turned out perfectly, and I was just happy that Jackie was happy too, and that we had been able to remain close over the years. One day I was outside feeding the chickens when I heard a car pull up. We were out in the country and there was only one road into our property, so if we heard a car, it was someone coming to see us. I tried to shield my eyes from the blinding sun so I could see who was coming down the lane. When I saw it was Jackie with her cello slung over her shoulder, I squealed, called for Kip, and ran to her with my arms open wide. She flew into my arms and held me so tight, I instantly knew something was wrong. I pulled back from her and could see she had tears in her eyes. I put my arm around her, grabbed her case, and we headed inside. Over a few bottles of wine, she told Kip and I how her husband had been cheating on her with multiple orchestra groupies. I guess his most recent one was more than just a fling, and he had asked her for a divorce. I was shocked to be in this position. My life working out and Jackie's falling apart? I never would have predicted this. Jackie asked if she could stay with us for a while, and before even asking Kip, I said of course she could stay for as long as she wanted. Kip had a thing or two to say about it later in private, asking how long as she wanted, was likely to turn out. Those months were sweet. Me, Kip, Jackie, and the kids were a complete family. We had fun together and were so comfortable. On our country walks, we took pictures, and Kip would pick each of us up and spin us around. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy when Jackie's twirl seemed to last a touch longer than mine. And I saw Jackie's eyes linger on Kip as he moved onto the next in line. That night, Kip went into town for a late-night drink with friends, and Jackie and I sat in front of the fire with our nightly bottle of wine. She moaned a little and rubbed her back, saying she was having a hard time sleeping on the mattress in the guest room. I offered her me and Kip's bed that night to help her back. After she went into our room, I left a note taped to the outside of the door for Kip telling him that I was in the guest room. I slept soundly that night until I heard a curse and a bang in the wee hours of the morning. I sat up to realize that Kip wasn't lying next to me. I tiptoed out into the hall, not wanting to wake the kids, just in time to see Kip exiting Jackie's room with nothing on. I stood staring at him, stunned, and he shook his head and said, "Hillary, what did you do?" I said, "What on earth do you mean, what did I do? What did you do?" I could hear Jackie stirring inside and shoved the door open. "Did you really do what I think you did?" I asked her. She gave me that innocent look she was famous for when she knew she had messed up and said, "Oh, Hills, I thought you wouldn't mind. We've always shared everything. I just assumed you had told him to come in here because you knew I was sad. You've always been so good that way." Kip was standing there, looking like he was about to throw up, for several reasons. I told Jackie that she was to pack up her things that very day and leave. As awful as what she'd done was, it was still hard for me to be mad at her, and even harder to kick her out. She left that afternoon, and didn't even look back down the lane. When I got a call 2 months later, it was the first time we'd spoken since the incident. She told me that she was pregnant, and that Kip was the only one she'd been with. Well, didn't that just beat all? Kip was the first time I had won. The first time someone wanted me instead of Jackie. And she had gotten her piece anyway. It took a while for me to forgive Kip, but he really didn't know what he was doing. Jackie was another matter. I hope one day to be close with her again, but that day is a long way off. To watch more animated story videos like this, hit that subscribe button.
And tell us in the comments section what you thought about this story.